Hey there, creepy peeps, and welcome to another creepy book club. Today we are talking about meddling kids. Really quick though, before I get into anything else, I want to say thank you to my creepy patron peeps for your support of my channel. Thank you guys so much. If you want to find out the perks to being a creepy patron peep, you can follow that link in the description. Alright, so Meddling Kids was written by Edgar Cantero, came out in 2017, and is published by Doubleday and Blumhouse Books. In the vein of Enid Blyton's Famous Five and Scooby-Doo, the story follows a group of former teen detectives all grown up. Things weren't the same after the last case of the Blyton Summer Detective Club, the strange events affecting each member in different ways. 13 years after that case, the detectives returned to Blyton to uncover what really happened and solve the case once and for all. Right, so I never read Enid Blyton's novels as a kid, but I sure as hell watched a lot of Scooby-Doo. I often credit the show with getting me into horror in the first place, like at early stages. That show, among a couple of others, were definitely the reason why I loved Halloween, why I loved creepy and spooky things. So I feel like Scooby-Doo was definitely like the precursor to my horror career. So I love it. I love Scooby-Doo. So obviously the title Meddling Kids is a reference to that. And if you look up Blyton's books, you'll see that like Meddling Kids like fits that a whole lot more. But it still works as a Scooby-Doo reference. There being 5 members of the group, 2 girls, 2 girls, 2 guys, and a dog. As this is kind of like a mystery solving type of story, there are a lot of references to the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew, the latter of which I also read like every single book of as a kid. So I love the idea of kind of taking those stories where it's always like a person in a mask, you know, for all the creepiness of Scooby-Doo. The show anyway, it's never something actually supernatural for the most part. Same thing with like Nancy Drew, it's always a person in a mask or a person doing it. So I love the idea of kind of like taking that and saying, no, it's gonna be something actually supernatural and scary and fucked up. So I liked that. It's definitely something, if you liked any of those growing up, Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew, Scooby-Doo, the Enid Blyton novels, if you liked any of those, you're going to love this. It's definitely for those kids all grown up. The book also has a lot of kind of movie references in a sense, like mostly in the writing style. There are some bits of the dialogue where it turns into kind of like script style. If I can find one. Perfect. So as you can see here, you'll see that it's just like the character names and what they're saying, no description in between. So I feel like they kind of use that when the dialogue is supposed to be happening really fast and snappy, and it just makes sense that way. But I really liked that. And the book is kind of meta in and of itself, which is kind of interesting. I've never read a book that makes you aware that you're reading a book. Movies, sure. Books, no. And I loved it. You guys know how I love that meta. So for example, there's like a moment where instead of, so like, it's gonna be hard to explain. But so for example, where you would say in a book, like, a few minutes later, this happened, blah, 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 blah. There was a part in the book where it said like, 1 blank space later. And it was like the start of a new paragraph. So it was acknowledging that like the previous paragraph ended and the start of the new paragraph says 1 blank space later, which is the space in between the paragraphs. You guys get it? There's also another part where it's like the chapter should have ended, and actually let me see if I can find it because it's towards the end of the book, and see if I can so up here you would normally have another blank space and the chapter number, and we'd be starting a new chapter. No. So obviously this bit ends kind of like a cliffhanger, how a chapter would end. And then the next line up at the top here says, this, Andy spat at the intended end of the chapter. So there's like stuff like that scattered throughout the book, which is very meta, makes you aware that you're reading a book, which is kind of awesome. I've never read a book like that, like I said, and I loved that aspect of the book. The characters were also awesome. I loved how they were all really good in their respective fields, but were also capable of making mistakes. So for example, we have Carrie, who is incredibly smart. She's a biologist. We have Andy, who is like a kind of leader type, and she's very good at combat, guns, fighting, that sort of thing. And then you have Nate, who is very into kind of like the supernatural aspects of it. And that's what I really like the most about Nate's character. Obviously the detective club, as they were solving the mysteries, you know, they knew it was always a person in the mask. So as adults, they have trouble dealing with the fact that maybe it wasn't just a person in the mask and maybe there's actually something supernatural going on. Nate is the first person to just like 100% believe it, pretty much. And I thought that was really refreshing, because usually in these types of stories, it's a female who is the first to believe it, and she's trying to convince like the logical male that the supernatural does exist. So I really liked that it was flip-flopped here, and Carrie and Andy are kind of like the super logical ones, and Nate is fully on board for the supernatural stuff, and he has to kind of convince them in a way that they'll understand. So I enjoyed that. That being said though, I do want to talk about one thing I did not like about the book, and it has to do with Carrie's character actually. So the book isn't really from any one character's point of view, but there are times where we get glimpses into each of their heads. Although I feel like the book is kind of dominated by Nate and Andy, and that's really the main problem I had with this. The only reason why I didn't like that we didn't get so much of Carrie's inner monologue is because of Andy being in love with her. With Carrie, I mean, not with herself. The book is showing a lot of Andy's and Nate's feelings and inner dialogue. So we hear at least once every chapter that Andy is in love with Carrie. We understand this. And there's one intimate scene in the book where Carrie says to Andy that she's not sure that she's into girls in that way. So you're like, okay. But then, spoiler alert, by the end of the book, they are pretty much starting a relationship together. And that's where I had the problem, because I wanted to see Carrie's like mental, emotional journey to get from point A being, I'm not sure I'm into you that way, to point B where she is willing to start a relationship with this person. So I was kind of disappointed that we didn't get to see that character arc, because Andy spends the entire book being in love with Carrie, so there's no real journey in that aspect with Andy's character. So I was kind of more interested to see Carrie's journey to that. So I was a little bit disappointed that we didn't get to see a lot of that. But if anybody did leave their review, I'm going to show them right now, and you can pause if you want to read them. So, was Meddling Kids worth the read? Hell yes. The writing style and the humor were awesome, but probably aren't for everybody. So if you don't like that meta stuff, it might be a little much to read a book that's that way. It's one thing to sit through a 90-minute movie, another thing to take a week or more to read a book. It takes up a lot more of your time. So if you don't like that style of humor, this may not be the book for you. But if any of what I mentioned sounded appealing, you should read this book. I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5 as a personal score. On Goodreads in general, it has a 3.59 out of 5. On barnesandnoble.com and on amazon.com, both they have a 4 out of 5. If you've read Meddling Kids, let me know in the comment section down below what you thought about it, and let me know if you're planning on joining the Creepy Book Club and if you're excited about reading our September book. Sorry as I'm leaning down and talking, which is The Hatching by Ezekiel Boone. This is going to be the book we read for September. You can go to our group page on Goodreads for more details. There's always a link for that in the description. This is about giant killer spiders, so I mean, I'm not going to have nightmares at all. I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're new here and become a Creepy Peep today. I post videos Monday through Friday, and you can ring that notification bell down there to be notified every time I post a video. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, stay strange. Bye.